Welcome to Ping 24 updates. Subscribe my channel and press the bell icon for more updates. Good evening. Tonight, we begin with breaking news from the South China Sea, where tensions have reached a boiling point and the world's attention is now sharply focused. The Philippines has issued an urgent warning after 19 Chinese vessels massed near Scarborough Shoal, a disputed resource-rich territory that has long been a flashpoint between the two nations. This is no routine patrol. It's a provocative show of force, with ships moving in tight formation and signaling a clear message to the region. The Philippine Coast Guard calls it a dramatic escalation, warning that such actions threaten the region's already fragile stability and could spark a wider conflict. Headlines flash: China masses 19 ships near Scarborough, Philippines issues warning amid escalation. The story dominates news cycles across Asia and beyond. For Manila, this is a direct challenge to sovereignty, a test of resolve that cannot be ignored. The government vows to defend its territorial integrity, rallying its military and diplomatic corps to respond to the growing threat. The world is watching. What happens when two nations stand firm in contested waters, each refusing to back down? This is the culmination of months of close calls, tense encounters, and diplomatic protests that have failed to resolve the underlying dispute. 19 ships suggest a coordinated, deliberate action by Beijing, far beyond normal maritime activity, and a clear demonstration of power. Philippine officials are scrambling, coordinating with allies, reaching out to international partners, and preparing for any eventuality as the situation grows more unpredictable. China's deployment signals its intent to assert claims with overwhelming presence, regardless of international law or diplomatic pressure from the global community. Scarborough Shoal is more than a territorial dispute. It's a symbol of national pride and a lifeline for Filipino fishermen, now blocked from their ancestral waters and facing an uncertain future. As night falls, the Chinese fleet's lights glitter on the horizon, a string of threats pushing the region closer to crisis, as uncertainty and anxiety grip those watching from the shore. Manila's warnings are backed by irrefutable satellite evidence. New images reveal a sustained buildup of Chinese ships, forming a web of control deep into the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Over the past year, satellites have tracked a surge in Chinese naval activity. Ships, anchoring for weeks, shadowing Philippine missions, and cordoning off disputed shoals. The data shows a clear strategy. China is using its vast fleet to establish de facto control. Recent images show warships, Coast Guard cutters, and militia boats conducting complex maneuvers and blocking access. This relentless pressure is designed to wear down resistance and normalize China's presence. Satellite surveillance cuts through propaganda, providing an unbiased record of events. When the Philippines reports swarms of militia boats, satellite imagery confirms it. When China denies obstruction, photos show its ships blocking Philippine vessels. This technology is now essential for transparency and accountability in the West Philippine Sea. The 19 ships near Scarborough Shoal form a multi-layered force. At the forefront, advanced planned destroyers equipped with long-range missiles, Beijing's Iron Fist. These warships linger on the periphery, deterring intervention. Next, the China Coast Guard. Large, white-hulled ships, often bigger than neighboring navies' frigates, enforce China's claims with water cannons and blockades. Their civilian paint offers plausible deniability, masking military intent. The most numerous are the blue-hulled maritime militia fishing boats, operating in coordinated swarms, harassing foreign vessels and establishing a constant presence. Satellite and on-the-ground reports show these boats moving in formation, not fishing, but following orders. This sophisticated whole-of-government approach overwhelms rivals without open warfare. The result, a constant, multi-layered pressure campaign to change the status quo, one ship at a time. The crisis in the West Philippine Sea has triggered alarm across the Indo-Pacific, sending ripples of concern through governments, military alliances, and global markets alike. The region's stability is now under intense scrutiny, as nations watch the unfolding events with growing unease. Japan, facing its own disputes with China over maritime boundaries, sees the Scarborough Shoal standoff as part of a broader challenge to the rules-based international order. Tokyo has offered diplomatic and material support to the Philippines, emphasizing the need for unity among like-minded nations to deter further aggression. Australia, heavily reliant on open and secure sea lanes for trade, has strongly condemned China's actions. In response, Canberra has increased joint patrols with the United States and called for greater regional cooperation to uphold freedom of navigation. Canberra warns that allowing one nation to redraw maritime boundaries by force threatens not only regional peace but also the credibility of international law, setting a dangerous precedent for future disputes. India, with major trade interests and energy routes at stake, is strengthening ties with Southeast Asian nations and advocating for a free and open Indo-Pacific. New Delhi has increased its naval presence and called for peaceful resolution through dialogue and respect for international norms. The United States, the Philippines' treaty ally, has reaffirmed its defense commitments under the Mutual Defense Treaty and stepped up joint patrols in the contested waters, signaling its readiness to support Manila if tensions escalate further. Washington warns that a miscalculation or accidental clash could quickly spiral into a larger conflict, potentially drawing in the US and its allies, with far-reaching consequences for global security. The international chorus of concern is growing louder, isolating Beijing diplomatically even as its naval fleet grows stronger and more assertive in the region. The world's response, through diplomacy, economic measures, and military posturing, will shape the future of the region and determine whether peace or conflict prevails. The stakes are high. Freedom of navigation, the integrity of international law, and the delicate balance of power in Asia all hang in the balance as the crisis unfolds. The next moves by Manila, Washington, and Beijing will be critical, with the potential to either ease tensions or ignite a new era of confrontation in the Indo-Pacific. The crisis at Scarborough Shoal is the peak of months of mounting provocations. In August, a Philippine resupply mission to Ayungin Shoal was blocked and rammed by Chinese Coast Guard vessels, a major escalation. International condemnation followed, but Beijing only grew bolder. By September and October, swarms of Chinese militia boats formed near permanent blockades at Ayungin and Scarborough. The number of Chinese warships and cutters steadily climbed, now reaching 19 at Scarborough. Each Philippine patrol is shadowed by a phalanx of Chinese ships. Diplomatic protests are met with dismissive responses from Beijing. The reality on the water is now dictated by the sheer number of Chinese hulls. Recent incidents reveal the new level of risk in the West Philippine Sea. In August, a Chinese Coast Guard ship deliberately rammed a Philippine supply boat at Ayungin Shoal, caught on video. Days before the current standoff, a Philippine patrol aircraft documented a coordinated Chinese fleet sealing off Scarborough's lagoon. Filipino fishermen reported being harassed and driven away by water cannons and aggressive maneuvers. Their testimony highlights the human cost, fear, lost livelihoods, and constant danger. Scarborough Shoal is now effectively under Chinese blockade. These incidents are part of a calculated campaign, each act of aggression carefully calibrated to avoid outright war. The goal: make the Philippines' position untenable, forcing it to give up its rights. China's strategy is clear: control through intimidation and overwhelming presence. At the heart of the conflict is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. This treaty gives the Philippines exclusive rights to resources within 200 nautical miles of its coast. Scarborough Shoal lies well within this zone. Manila's legal position is clear. It has sovereign rights over these waters. China, however, claims historic rights within its sweeping 9-dash line, covering nearly 90% of the South China Sea. This claim has no basis in modern international law and contradicts UNCLOS. In 2016, an international tribunal invalidated China's 9-dash line and affirmed Filipino fishing rights at Scarborough. China refuses to recognize the ruling, calling it null and void. The result: a legal deadlock fueling ongoing confrontation. The conflict persists because Beijing rejects binding international judgments. The world's rules are being tested in these contested waters. The real victims of this ongoing conflict are the Filipino fishermen, whose lives and livelihoods are directly threatened by the escalating tensions at sea. For generations, Scarborough Shoal has been their lifeline, a rich fishing ground passed down from father to son. Now, it's a no-go zone, heavily patrolled by intimidating Chinese ships, cutting them off from their traditional source of income. Fishermen describe being chased relentlessly, blasted with powerful water cannons, and having their gear and hard-earned catch confiscated, leaving them with nothing to bring home. Each trip out to sea is a gamble, risking not only confrontation and financial loss, but also their safety, and sometimes even their lives. Many are forced to fish closer to shore, where the waters are overfished, catches are smaller, and competition among local fishermen is fierce and unforgiving. The economic impact ripples through entire communities. Families go into debt just to survive, children are pulled out of school to help, and local markets struggle as fewer fish are brought in. These fishermen are ordinary civilians, caught in a geopolitical struggle far beyond their control, yet they bear the brunt of its consequences every day. A wooden banca is no match for a steel-hulled cutter. The risk of fatal accidents, collisions, or even sinking is ever present and terrifying. The aggression and intimidation at sea only raise the probability of tragedy, making every journey a test of courage and resilience. For these coastal communities, international law is not just an abstract concept, it's a matter of daily survival and dignity. Their plight is a stark reminder. This conflict is about people's right to live, work, and provide for their families in peace and security. The stakes are deeply human, not just geopolitical. Behind every headline, there are families, hopes, and futures hanging in the balance. The massing of 19 Chinese ships at Scarborough Shoal is a potential turning point for the Indo-Pacific. China's strategy has shifted from asserting claims to enforcing them with overwhelming presence. If Beijing solidifies control, it sets a precedent. International law can be ignored by the powerful. This would embolden further expansion, not just in the South China Sea but in other disputed regions. Smaller nations would face a stark choice: accommodate China or risk coercion. Trillions in global trade pass through these waters. Freedom of navigation is a core global interest. The world's response will determine if the rules-based order holds or if force redraws the map. This is a test of resolve for the Philippines, its allies, and the international community. The lights of those 19 ships are a spotlight on a defining challenge of our time. The world is watching. Will the rule of law prevail, or the rule of force?